My fiancé dumped me for his ex, now he's back claiming her baby isn't his. You want to know how I rebuilt my life after it was completely shattered? Well, buckle up, because my fiancé didn't just break my heart, he detonated my entire world. 3 years, a diamond ring, a wedding dress hanging in my closet, all for him to walk out the door for a ghost from his past. But then, he came back, and that's when things got truly bizarre. It all started innocently enough. My Mark, came to me, a little sheepish. My high school ex wants to catch up, he said, showing me an email from a woman named Jana. They'd dated for 7 years, back in the day, before she left for grad school abroad. They hadn't spoken in 5. The email was polite, professional even, just a friendly check-in. Curious about his life, she said. I looked at it, then at him, and honestly, I felt nothing but trust. Yes, go meet her, I told him, genuinely believing in us. How naive was I? He went for coffee. He came back, different. For 3 agonizing weeks, a dark cloud hung over us. He was glued to his phone, constantly picking fights out of thin air. When we were intimate, his eyes wouldn't meet mine. The worst was when I reached for him, trying to hug him after work, something I'd done every single day for 3 years, and he flinched. Like my touch was poison. What's wrong? I asked, my voice small, imagining it was just work stress. I was so wrong. That Saturday, I went to knit with his grandmother, a ritual, a comfort, since she'd practically adopted me after my own grandmother passed. When I came home, Mark was packing. My blood ran cold. I'm sorry, he mumbled, not looking at me, his eyes fixed on a box. But when life gives you a second chance, you have to take it. What was he talking about? My heart pounded a frantic rhythm against my ribs. Seeing Jana again, he continued, voice flat, I realized what I lost. What we had was real. What you and I have is comfortable, but it's not the same. I stood there, a half-knitted scarf for him still clutched in my hands, as he explained how his ex wanted him back. How she'd realized what she'd lost when she heard he was engaged. How they'd been talking every single day since that coffee. How he was moving in with her tonight. You're leaving me for someone you've known 3 weeks after 3 years together? My voice was barely a whisper. I've known her since I was 15, he retorted, finally looking at me, a strange mix of guilt and defiance in his eyes. You can't compete with history like that. He left me, sobbing and crumpled on the floor of our apartment. Said he'd keep paying his half of the rent until the lease was up. His friend was waiting outside with a truck. They loaded his boxes, and neither of them could even look at me. Those next 2 weeks were hell. I couldn't eat. Couldn't sleep in our bed. His grandmother called me daily, furious, calling him a fool, swearing he'd regret it. His mother texted apologies, devastated about the wedding that would never happen. Even his sister reached out, whispering that Jana had always been manipulative, that she'd probably leave him again once the thrill wore off. And then, 3 weeks after he walked out, my phone rang. It was Mark. I made a mistake, he choked out, his voice breaking. The biggest mistake of my life. Are you drunk? I snapped, a flicker of something, maybe hope, maybe just anger, igniting inside me. No. I'm clear-headed for the first time in weeks. Jana, she's not who I remembered. We're strangers pretending to know each other. He went on, a torrent of complaints. She kept talking about her life abroad, the men she dated, how provincial our town felt to her now. She'd made fun of his job. Called it cute that he was still doing the same thing. She'd thrown out all his stuff because it didn't match her aesthetic. And I miss you. I miss us. I miss coming home to someone who actually knows me, not some idealized memory from high school. You left me for a memory, I stated, the words tasting like ash. I know. God, I know. Can we talk in person? No. Please. I'll explain everything. Jana's already talking about moving to London for her career. She never intended to stay. She just didn't want me marrying someone else. I actually laughed. A dry, bitter sound. So she won you back just to prove she could. Yeah, he admitted, his voice ragged. She keeps asking about you, comparing herself to you. It was never about wanting me. It was about beating you. And you fell for it. I'm in love with you. I've always been in love with you. I just got confused. You weren't confused when you packed your things. You weren't confused when you said she was your second chance. I'm outside. My blood went cold. What? I'm outside the apartment. Our apartment, please. Just 5 minutes. I looked out the window. His car was there, him standing beside it in the rain like some tragic romance movie scene. But this wasn't a movie. If you don't leave, I'm calling the police. I still have a key. My name's still on the lease. You wouldn't. I need you to understand. Jana's pregnant. The words hit me like ice water. What? But here's the thing, he continued, his voice shaking. I don't think it's mine. The timing doesn't add up. Unless she was already pregnant when she contacted me. I hung up. He's still outside, still calling, still texting. His latest message, she targeted me. She knew about our engagement from social media. I have proof. I haven't responded, but I can see him from my window, a dark silhouette, and he's not leaving. I stood there, phone gripped so tight my fingers hurt. The screen still showed his latest text about having proof. This is just another way to get me to talk. I pulled the curtains closed, hard, the rings scraping against the rod. Then, I walked through the apartment, flipping off every light until I was standing in complete darkness. My phone kept lighting up, a silent alarm, but I didn't read them. I couldn't see him anymore, but I knew he was still down there, probably staring up, trying to figure out which room I was in. The apartment felt smaller, the walls pushing in. I sat on the floor, back against the couch, terrified to go to the bedroom where I might not hear if he tried to come inside. Around midnight, the knocking started. Not a loud pounding, but soft, persistent taps that made my skin crawl. His muffled voice came through the door, clear enough, 5 minutes. Just 5 minutes to show you the evidence about Jana. 5 minutes to explain everything. 5 minutes to make you understand. I shoved my headphones in, blasting music as loud as I could stand, but I could still feel the vibration of his knocking through the floor. My hands shook so badly I could barely type a text to his sister. He won't leave. I'm scared. She responded immediately, asking if I wanted her to call the police. Not yet, I typed back, but maybe soon. The knocking stopped. I pulled out a headphone. Silence for maybe 30 seconds. Then his phone rang outside, and I heard his voice get louder. His sister must have called. Him. I couldn't make out his words, but the tone was angry, and it wasn't his anger. She was yelling at him. This went on for 20 minutes, her voice occasionally cutting through clear enough that I caught words like harassment, pathetic, and police. Finally, a car door slammed, an engine started. I ran to the window, peeking through the curtain just enough to see his taillights disappearing down the street. My phone buzzed, told him I'd call the cops myself if he came back tonight. Coming over tomorrow to check on you. I texted back a shaky thank you. I didn't sleep at all that night. Every sound made me jump. I checked the window every 15 minutes, pulling the curtain back an inch to scan the parking lot. By sunrise, I was exhausted, shaky, and I realized I can't keep living like this. Not with him having a key and his name on the lease, giving him legal right to be here. I waited until exactly 9 a.m., the moment the landlord's office opened, and called. Jasper Barker, the landlord, answered. I explained the situation, vaguely. Ex moved out, won't stop coming by, I needed options. He was quiet for a moment. Seen this kind of thing before, he said. He offered to send someone to change the locks that afternoon if I paid for it, and he'd deal with Mark's access legally. I agreed so fast I almost interrupted him. The locksmith would be there around 2. Mark's sister showed up at 10:30, armed with coffee and breakfast sandwiches. She took one look at me, still in yesterday's clothes, hair a mess, eyes red and swollen, and pulled me into a tight hug. Our whole family is disgusted with Mark, she said, her voice thick with emotion. Mom cried when she heard what he did last night. We sat on the couch, and she made me eat half a sandwich, even though I had no appetite. While we talked, Mark started calling her phone. She declined the first, then the second, then the third. After the 5th call in 10 minutes, she blocked his number completely, showing me the screen as proof. She stayed with me until the locksmith arrived at 2, a middle-aged guy who got to work without a single question. Mark's sister insisted on paying, least we can do after what Mark put you through. I tried to argue, but she wouldn't hear it. It felt strange accepting help from his family when he was the one who destroyed everything. After she left, I tested the new lock 3 times, just to be sure. That evening, Mark came back. I heard his footsteps on the stairs, then the unmistakable sound of a key sliding into the lock. It didn't turn. He tried again, jiggling it harder. Nothing. Then my phone started ringing. I let it go to voicemail. He called again. Voicemail again. I turned the volume down, but I could see the screen lighting up, relentlessly. After the 10th call, I caved and listened to one voicemail. He was crying. His voice, raw and broken, talked about how Jana admitted she only wanted him back to prove she could. How she never loved him. How he threw away everything real for a lie. I felt nothing. Only emptiness where my love for him used to be. A hollow space that didn't even hurt anymore. The next morning, Mark's grandmother called. Her voice, shaky with age and emotion, apologized for her grandson. "You'll always be my granddaughter," she insisted, no matter what Mark did. "Blood doesn't make family. Love does." Then she said something that made me start crying harder than I had since he left. She'd written me into her will because I'm more family than he's proven to be. Her unconditional support was everything when I felt so abandoned by the person who was supposed to love me most. After work, Natasha came over and found me on the floor, surrounded by wedding planning binders. Vendor contracts, venue information, menu tastings, spread out like evidence of a future that no longer existed. She sat down, gently gathered the binders, and then pulled out her phone. "Okay," she said, "let's start making some calls." Some vendors were understanding, especially when Natasha, in her blunt way, explained the situation. Others cited cancellation policies and kept our deposits. Each call added another layer of pain, the financial cost of trusting someone who didn't deserve it. That evening, after Natasha left, I was sitting in the dark apartment when I heard his car pull up outside. The engine cut off. I peeked through the curtain, Mark getting out, looking up at my windows. He didn't knock this time, just stood there in the parking lot, like he was waiting for something. An hour passed. He was still there, leaning against his car, phone out. I watched him scroll and type, probably sending more messages I wasn't reading. Around 11, I couldn't take it anymore. I dialed the police non-emergency line. The woman who answered sounded tired but professional. "Someone's loitering outside my building. Won't leave." She said an officer would check it out. 20 minutes later, a patrol car pulled into the lot. Mark straightened up, putting his phone away. The officer got out, walked over. I could see Mark gesturing up at my window, probably explaining that his name was on the lease. They talked for maybe 5 minutes before the officer pointed toward the street. Mark got in his car, but before he drove away, he rolled down his window and shouted up at my building, "You're making a huge mistake. Jana played both of us. You'll regret this. The officer said something sharp to him, and Mark finally left. The officer looked up at my window, and I stepped back from the curtain, heart pounding. By the way, if you're still with me, then you know this story is far from over. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. Go ahead, hit that subscribe button, and join me on this wild ride. The next morning, I called my boss. My voice cracked when I tried to explain I needed a sick day. She didn't ask for details, just told me to take care of myself. I spent the entire day in bed, curtains closed, jumping at every car outside. My chest got tight, my breathing hitched with every passing footstep. I cried for a while, then felt nothing, then cried again. The cycle repeated until I was too exhausted to feel anything. Around 3 in the afternoon, a knock. I froze, thinking it was Mark. But then I heard his mother's soft voice calling my name. I opened the door. She stood there with reusable shopping bags full of groceries and a container of homemade soup. She took one look at me, and her face crumpled with sympathy. She came in without asking, putting things away, talking gently about how she figured I wasn't eating properly. She heated the soup, and we sat at the table while I picked at it. She reached across, took my hand. I always hoped you'd be my daughter-in-law, she whispered. I saw how good you were for Mark, how happy you made each other. She said she didn't understand what happened to her son, but she knew I didn't deserve any of it. Something broke open inside me, and I started sobbing, the kind of crying that shakes your whole body. She pulled me into her arms, stroking my hair, making soothing sounds like I was her own child. When I finally calmed, she made me promise to call her if I needed anything. Thursday night, my mom called, asking why I sounded so tired. Everything spilled out. My brother, William, said he was driving up for the weekend. You shouldn't be dealing with this alone. He arrived Friday evening and immediately asked how he could help. I just needed company, someone else in the apartment, so I didn't feel so scared. But Saturday morning, he suggested we box up all of Mark's remaining stuff and move it to storage. He made his choice when he packed his bags the first time, William pointed out. We spent the morning filling boxes with Mark's books, clothes, his random left-behinds. William rented a storage unit, and we loaded everything into his truck. Erasing Mark's physical presence from the space felt both sad and incredibly freeing. Sunday morning, someone pounded on the door. Before I could stop him, William answered. Mark stood in the hallway, looking wild, hair messy, eyes red. He demanded to know where his stuff was. William blocked the doorway with his body, calmly telling Mark his things were in storage and he needed to stop harassing me. Mark tried to push past him, but William was bigger, unmovable. I need to talk to her. She has to understand what Jana did. William pulled out his phone. If you want to communicate, it'll be through lawyers. Leave now, or I'm calling the police. They stared each other down for a long moment. Mark finally backed up. But he didn't leave quietly. Jana's pregnancy test came back positive, he shouted, his voice cracking. I'm going to be trapped with her forever because of your stubbornness. This is all your fault for not listening to me. William shut the door firmly, locked it, then turned to look at me. I was standing in the middle of the living room, and something shifted inside me. He was trying to make me feel guilty for his choices, like I was responsible for the mess he made. The grief that had weighed me down for weeks suddenly transformed into anger, hot and sharp in my chest. I was mad he left me for someone else, and even madder he expected me to fix it now that it didn't work out. William saw the change in my face and nodded, like he understood. Monday morning, I called the therapist Natasha recommended, Lindsay Horn. She had an opening on Wednesday afternoon. I can't process this alone anymore. When I sat in her office for the first time, the whole story poured out. I broke down describing how Mark became a completely different person during those 3 weeks with Jana, the phone calls, the fighting, the flinching. Lindsay listened, never interrupting. When I finished, she helped me see something I hadn't wanted to admit. She suggested that maybe Mark always had the capacity for this kind of selfishness, and I just never saw it because our relationship was comfortable and nothing ever challenged it. The idea made me feel sick, but it also explained so much about how quickly he changed when something shiny and new appeared. Saturday came, and Mark's grandmother called, inviting me to our regular knitting session. I almost said no, thinking it would be too awkward. But then I got angry again. Jana and Mark have already taken so much from me. I'm not letting them take this, too. When I arrived, 2 other women were there, friends of hers. They clearly knew what happened. They surrounded me with warmth and kindness, sharing their own heartbreaks, their own stories of survival. One talked about her husband leaving her after 20 years for his secretary. Another, a fiancé who disappeared 2 weeks before their wedding in the 70s. Their stories made me feel less alone. We knitted and drank tea, and I felt something loosen in my chest. During the week, mutual friends started reaching out in that awkward way people do. Some sent careful messages asking if I was okay. Others just said they were thinking of me. A few actually asked what happened, and I realized Mark must be telling his version to anyone who would listen. I needed to tell my side at least once. So, I wrote a group message to our closest mutual friends, keeping it simple and factual. Mark left me for his high school ex 3 weeks before our wedding. It didn't work out with her, and now he's harassing me because I won't take him back. I hit send before I could second-guess myself. The responses came in fast, overwhelmingly supportive. Several admitted Mark had contacted them, trying to paint me as unreasonable, asking them to convince me to talk to him. 3 friends shared screenshots of messages where Mark begged them to tell me he made a mistake. I felt validated, knowing other people saw through his manipulation, that I wasn't crazy for maintaining my boundaries. One friend wrote that she always thought Mark took me for granted and she was proud of me. Another said Jana always seemed manipulative in high school. The support felt like armor. Tuesday morning, I woke up to an Instagram DM, Jana. My stomach twisted. The message was long, designed to hurt. She wrote that Mark talked about me constantly, comparing everything she did to how I did things better. She said it was pathetic watching him pine for his safe backup option. She was tired of competing with a memory. She added that I should feel good knowing I ruined their relationship by being so perfect and boring that Mark couldn't stop thinking about me. I read it twice, hands shaking with anger. She's trying to provoke me. I screenshotted the entire conversation and sent it to Mark's sister without typing a single word back to Jana. Then I blocked her on every platform. The satisfaction of not giving her what she wanted felt better than any response I could have written. Mark's sister called an hour later, furious. She confronted Mark, who claimed he had no idea Jana contacted me. I don't believe him for a second, she said. Jana's too smart to do something like that without his knowledge. Then she dropped the real bomb. Jana had announced on social media yesterday that she was 12 weeks pregnant. Mark's sister had done the math. 12 weeks ago was before Jana ever reached out to Mark. She was already pregnant when she contacted him. The timeline made it impossible for the baby to be Mark's unless they were together before that coffee meeting. I sat down hard on my couch as this information sank in. Jana manipulated Mark from the very beginning, using him as a backup plan when she got pregnant by someone else. She saw our engagement announcement and decided to destroy it just to prove she could, to secure a safety net in case things didn't work out with whoever got her pregnant. I spent the rest of the day processing this revelation. Part of me felt vindicated. It confirmed Jana played Mark like a puppet. But another part felt disgusted that Mark destroyed our 3-year relationship for a complete lie. He chose to believe her fairy tale about rediscovering lost love when she was really just shopping for a father figure for another man's baby. I made myself a cup of tea, sat by the window. The twisted mixture of feelings was hard to sort. I wanted to feel sorry for Mark because he was clearly manipulated. But I couldn't forget that he made every single choice that led him here. He chose to keep meeting Jana in secret. He chose to pack his bags and leave me. He chose to say I couldn't compete with their history. Jana's manipulation didn't erase his responsibility for abandoning our relationship and hurting me so badly I couldn't eat or sleep for weeks. Wednesday afternoon, I told Lindsay about Jana's message and the pregnancy timeline. I struggled with conflicting feelings about Mark being a victim while also being the person who victimized me. Lindsay listened. Then she helped me understand something important: Mark had agency in every decision he made. Jana might have manipulated him, but he's a grown adult who chose to believe her, chose to pursue the relationship, chose to leave me without any real conversation. Jana's manipulation doesn't erase Mark's responsibility for his own actions and choices. This framework helped me hold both truths at the same time without excusing his behavior. Mark was manipulated, and Mark hurt me badly. Both things were true. Jana was a terrible person, and Mark was responsible for what he did to me. Both things were true. I didn't have to choose between seeing him as a victim or seeing him as someone who betrayed me, because he was both. Thursday, a letter in my mailbox. From Mark. 10 pages long, front and back, in his messy handwriting. I sat on my couch and read it, even though I knew I probably shouldn't. He wrote about Jana's manipulation, explaining the pregnancy timeline, how he realized she targeted him because of our engagement. He described how she love-bombed him, playing into his ego and nostalgia. He wrote about how she'd been cruel to him since he moved in, criticizing everything. But nowhere in the 10 pages did he actually apologize for what he did to me. It was all about him and his pain, his realization. Nothing about how he hurt me. I read the last page, then walked to the kitchen and threw the entire letter in the trash. I wasn't interested in his explanations anymore. More letters arrived over the next week. 8 pages about Jana criticizing him. 6 pages about her plans to move to London. 4 pages of him feeling trapped. I read the first 2, then stopped. I took each subsequent envelope directly from the mailbox to the recycling bin without breaking the seal. His crisis was not my emotional labor anymore. He made his choices, and now he got to live with the consequences. I wasn't his therapist or his mother or his girlfriend. I was just someone he used to know who he hurt very badly. Saturday night, Natasha picked me up, took me to a restaurant downtown. "You need to do something normal and fun," she said. We ordered drinks, appetizers, and she made me laugh with stories about her terrible dating experiences. While we waited, one of Mark's coworkers walked in. He spotted me, came over, clearly uncomfortable. He mentioned Mark had been a mess at work lately. I thanked him, and he walked away. Natasha raised her eyebrows. "Mark's life is completely falling apart." Instead of feeling satisfied, I just felt tired. Everything still revolved around him, even when I was trying to have a nice dinner with my best friend. Sunday morning, I started looking at apartments online. I needed a fresh start somewhere without memories of Mark in every corner. The financial hit from wedding cancellations meant I'd need a cheaper place. I looked at studios and one-bedrooms in neighborhoods I'd never lived in. The idea of a space entirely mine, where Mark never lived and never would, felt exciting. I scheduled tours. The first was too small. The second, perfect, but over budget. The third, a small one-bedroom in an older building across town with big windows and hardwood floors. It was cheaper than my current place, and it felt right the moment I walked in. I filled out an application. Lighter than I'd been in weeks. Monday afternoon, Mark left me a voicemail. I saw his name, almost deleted it. But something made me press play. His voice was desperate, broken. He begged me not to move. He'd heard through mutual friends I was apartment hunting, and it meant I was really giving up on us. His presumption that there was still in us after everything made me so angry. I threw my phone on the couch. We stopped being in us the moment he packed his bags and walked out the door. I picked up my phone and texted him for the first time since he left. "We stopped being in us the moment you packed your bags." My life choices are no longer your concern. I hit send. His response came through immediately. Text after text after text, flooding my phone. He wrote that I was being cruel, unforgiving. That everyone makes mistakes, and I was abandoning him when he needed me most. 20 texts in 10 minutes, each more unhinged than the last. He wrote that I never really loved him, or I would forgive him. He called me cold, heartless, said I was just like Jana in my own way. I methodically screenshotted everything. Then I sent the entire collection to Mark's sister and his mother, with a message, I'm blocking his number now. I blocked him on my phone, on social media, on every platform. The silence that followed felt like I could finally breathe. My phone stopped buzzing. The notifications stopped. I sat in my quiet apartment and felt something like peace settle over me for the first time since this nightmare started. The next morning, 17 emails from Mark. I opened my laptop and created a filter. Anything from his address went straight to archive without me seeing it. The little notification that said the filter was active gave me a sense of control I hadn't felt in weeks. I made coffee and actually ate breakfast for the first time in days. Scrambled eggs and toast I managed to finish without my stomach turning. Mark's sister texted me around noon, asking if I was okay. Mark had shown up at her house last night, crying about how I blocked him. She told me Jana was openly cheating on him now, bringing guys back to their apartment while Mark sat there like a kicked dog. I texted back, his consequences aren't my problem anymore. I'm done being his emotional support system. She sent back a thumbs up. Proud of you for setting boundaries. I spent the afternoon cleaning my apartment, scrubbing away the feeling of Mark's presence from every surface. I threw out his toothbrush, his razor, the coffee mug he always used. Each item in the trash felt like taking back another piece of my space. Tuesday afternoon, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost deleted it. But something made me open it. Jana. Her name at the top of a long message. She was leaving for London next month, and Mark was too pathetic to follow her. She wrote that I could have him back if I wanted her sloppy seconds, then included details about their sex life, how Mark cried about me during it. I read the whole thing, feeling nothing but disgust for both of them. She ended by saying Mark never got over me, and she was just proving she could take him if she wanted to. I screenshotted the message, sent it to Mark's sister with a note, this is the last thing I'm sharing about either of them. Then I blocked Jana's number, cutting off the last thread connecting me to that toxic situation. Mark's sister called immediately, and we talked for an hour about how manipulative Jana had always been. She said Jana got off on breaking up relationships just to prove she could, then lost interest once she won. I thanked her for the validation, but told her I was ready to stop talking about Mark and Jana altogether. She agreed. Wednesday morning, Jasper's email, my apartment application was approved. I actually screamed with excitement, the first real joy I'd felt in weeks. I called Natasha. She squealed. We need to celebrate. That weekend, she and William came over to help me pack. We ordered pizza, played music, sorting through my stuff. I got rid of things that reminded me of Mark, keeping only what felt like mine. The coffee maker we bought together went in the donation box because I never liked it anyway. The throw pillows he picked out were tossed. Framed photos of us came down, into the trash without a second glance. Natasha found the wedding binder I'd been hiding under my bed, held it up. I shook my head, and she dumped it straight into recycling. We worked until midnight, clearing out the apartment. Thursday afternoon, Mark's grandmother called. Will you come to Thanksgiving dinner with us? She asked. Mark wouldn't be there, she explained. They told him he wasn't welcome until he got his life together. I was touched but unsure. Your family, she insisted, regardless of Mark's choices. Her certainty made me tear up with gratitude. I told her I'd think about it. Take your time, she said, but I'm setting a place for you either way. That night in therapy, Lindsay encouraged me to go. Chosen family is just as valid as blood family. Mark's family is choosing you over him right now. That says something important about your worth. I left the session feeling more confident. Thanksgiving morning, I drove to Mark's grandmother's house with a pumpkin pie. My hands shook a little as I rang the doorbell, but Mark's mother opened it with a huge smile, pulling me into a tight hug. Inside, the house smelled like turkey and stuffing. Mark's father shook my hand. His sister hugged me, whispering that Mark tried to show up, but their dad turned him away. We ate. I was surrounded by people who treated me with love and support. Mark's mother apologized again for her son. You don't need to keep saying sorry for his choices, I told her. His sister joked, we're keeping you in the divorce. Everyone laughed. Even Mark's father, who rarely shared feelings, told me I deserved better, that he was ashamed of his son. Mark's grandmother squeezed my hand. During dessert, his sister mentioned Jana left for London last week. Mark was completely alone now, having burned bridges with most of his friends. I felt a flicker of pity, but mostly relief. Mark's grandmother squeezed my hand again. Some people have to lose everything to learn anything. I relaxed into the warmth of being with people who chose me. The following weekend, William, Natasha, and Mark's sister all showed up to help me move. Her truck was a surprise, but she insisted she wanted to support my fresh start. We loaded boxes, made trips across town to my new apartment. The space was smaller, but it was mine. No memories of Mark. The walls were white and clean. The floors, old hardwood. I hung new curtains, light gray, letting in sunshine. We arranged furniture. By evening, my new apartment looked like a home. They ordered Chinese food, and we sat on the floor, eating straight from the containers. Mark's sister toasted with her soda can, to new beginnings. Everyone clinked. After they left, I walked through each room, touching the walls, claiming the space. My first night in the new apartment, I slept better than I had in 2 months. I woke up feeling lighter, like something heavy had lifted off my chest. The sunrise came through different windows, and I actually smiled. I made coffee in my new kitchen, standing at the counter in my pajamas, without any memories of Mark doing the same. The apartment was quiet, peaceful. I spent the morning unpacking, hanging pictures, only ones that felt like me. No photos of Mark. Just images of places I wanted to visit, art I picked out. By afternoon, my new place felt settled and real. Tuesday evening, I was making dinner when someone knocked. I looked through the peephole. My stomach dropped. Mark. He stood in the hallway, looking terrible, thin, exhausted, dark circles under his eyes. His clothes hung loose. He knocked again, talking through the door, begging me to let him explain. I have nothing left, he cried. You're the only person who ever really knew me. I didn't open the door. Instead, I called his sister. She answered immediately. Mark found my new address. He's outside. She said she'd be there in 10 minutes. Don't engage with him at all. I stood away from the door, listening to him beg and cry, my heart pounding, but my resolve firm. When his sister arrived, I heard her voice in the hallway, furious. She yelled at him about boundaries, restraining orders. Eventually, they left. She called an hour later, sounding tired. Mark had finally admitted the truth about Jana's baby. Jana confessed, before leaving, that she got pregnant by a guy in London and used Mark as a convenient American backup plan. The timing never added up because she was already 12 weeks pregnant when she contacted him. She targeted him specifically after seeing our engagement on social media, wanting to prove she could still have him. Mark was devastated, but his sister said he still made his own choices. I listened to all of this, feeling nothing except relief that I escaped becoming further mixed up in their toxic situation. The baby Mark thought might trap him with Jana forever was never his at all. Jana played them both, but Mark chose to believe her lies over trusting what we had built. His sister apologized for calling so late. It's okay, I told her, I'm grateful you came to remove him. After we hung up, I sat in my quiet apartment, feeling the weight of everything that happened, but also feeling free. The next morning, I booked an extra session with Lindsay. When I sat in her familiar office, she asked how I was doing. I told her about Mark showing up, Jenna's confession, feeling relieved but also stuck. I kept thinking about what Mark went through, how she used him, how he must feel knowing the baby wasn't his. Lindsay stopped me there. You've spent the last 20 minutes talking about Mark's pain and Jenna's manipulation instead of your own healing. She asked what I wanted for my future, rather than what happened in my past. The question caught me off guard. I'd been so focused on understanding their story that I'd forgotten to write my own. She challenged me to think about what I wanted, independent of Mark, independent of what happened, just for myself. I struggled to answer. Every goal I had was tied to our relationship. Lindsay waited patiently. Eventually, I started listing small things. I want to try pottery. I want to spend more time with my own family. I want to focus on my career. She smiled. Those are perfect starting points. Walking out, I felt different, like something had shifted in how I saw everything. That evening, I searched for pottery classes. I found one that met Wednesday nights at a community center. The next session started in 2 weeks. I signed up before I could talk myself out of it. 2 weeks later, I walked in, nervous. The studio was bright, smelled like wet clay. The instructor, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes, showed our small group the basics. My first attempts were terrible. The clay wobbled, collapsed. But she came over, guided my fingers. Something about the feel of cool clay spinning under my palms was calming. By the end of the class, I'd made a lopsided bowl that looked like a kindergartner made it, but I was proud. The other students were friendly. One woman mentioned she started taking classes after her divorce, as therapy. I didn't share my story, but I nodded, understanding. Driving home, I felt lighter. Mark used to say pottery was silly and impractical. I realized how many small interests I gave up because he didn't value them. The next Wednesday, I made a slightly better bowl. The instructor complimented my technique. Creating something beautiful with my hands felt therapeutic in ways therapy itself didn't reach. On a Friday morning in late November, Mark's name appeared in my inbox. My stomach dropped, but I forced myself to open it. The email was different. Not desperate. He wrote that he knew he didn't deserve my forgiveness or attention, but he needed to acknowledge what he did wrong. He listed specific things without making excuses. Leaving me was the most selfish choice he ever made, he said. He let nostalgia and ego destroy something real. He admitted he chose to believe Jana's lies because it felt exciting, validating. He threw away 3 years of trust and love for a fantasy. He acknowledged Jana manipulated him, but that he made every choice himself, that being manipulated didn't erase his responsibility for hurting me. He wasn't asking for anything, not a response, not forgiveness. Just that I needed to know he understood what he destroyed. The email ended with an apology that didn't demand anything in return. I read it 3 times, looking for manipulation, a hidden ask, a guilt trip. It wasn't there. For the first time since he left, something he wrote felt genuine. I didn't respond, but I saved the email in a folder labeled closure, recognizing it as a small step toward the end of this chapter. Thanksgiving approached. My mother called, asking if I was coming home. For 3 years, I'd spent every major holiday with Mark's family, fitting my own family visits around his traditions. My mother never complained, but I heard the hope in her voice. Yes, I told her. I'll be there for Thanksgiving, and probably Christmas, too. She sounded thrilled. After we hung up, I realized how much I'd prioritized Mark's family over my own. How I'd bent my life around his preferences without him ever doing the same for me. I'm reclaiming parts of myself that got lost. When I told Mark's sister about my plans, she understood. Her family would miss me, but they were glad I was spending time with my own parents. She mentioned Mark was planning to spend Thanksgiving alone, having burned most of his bridges. I felt sad for him, but not responsible for fixing his loneliness, which Lindsay said was healthy boundary setting. The week before Thanksgiving, I drove to my parents' house with a car full of my pottery pieces. My mother loved them, displaying them on her kitchen windowsill. The Monday after Thanksgiving, my boss called me into her office. I was nervous until I saw her smiling. "We're promoting you to senior coordinator, with a significant raise, effective immediately." She mentioned I'd shown real growth and leadership. My project work was outstanding. I thanked her, trying not to cry, because the recognition meant more than she knew. Walking back to my desk, I felt proud. I'd thrown energy into work as a healthy distraction, rather than falling apart. That evening, I called Natasha. She insisted we go out to celebrate. Over dinner, she told me I seemed different lately, more confident, more settled. She was right. Slowly, I was becoming someone stronger. The promotion reminded me I was capable and valuable, outside of any relationship. I used part of my first bigger paycheck to buy better pottery tools and signed up for an advanced class. Early December brought another call from Mark's grandmother. Christmas Eve dinner, like every year. I hesitated. She insisted. "Your family, regardless of what Mark did." She told me Mark wouldn't be there because they told him he wasn't welcome until he got his life together and made real amends. Her matter-of-fact tone made me smile. I accepted. Later that week, Lindsay asked how I felt about seeing Mark's family without him. I realized I didn't feel guilty or awkward anymore. I felt like I was going home to people who loved me. Lindsay said that was healthy emotional boundary setting. Mark, alone for Thanksgiving, would be alone for Christmas too. I felt sad for him, but not responsible. Christmas Eve arrived, cold and clear. I drove to Mark's grandmother's house with presents and my best pottery bowl, filled with homemade cookies. The house glowed warm. Mark's mother answered, pulling me into a tight hug. Inside, the whole family was there, except Mark. Everyone greeted me with genuine warmth. His sister hugged me. "You look happy," she whispered. "Your eyes are brighter than I've seen them in months." We ate dinner around the big table. I realized how much I missed these people, how they'd become my family. After dinner, Mark's mother pulled me aside, handed me a small wrapped box. Inside, a beautiful silver necklace with a delicate pendant, clearly old. "It belonged to Mark's late aunt," she said. "She never had children. I want you to have it, because you're the daughter I always wanted." Her voice broke. She knew Mark messed everything up, but that didn't change how she felt about me. The gesture overwhelmed me. I started crying. I didn't just lose Mark. I gained a family who chose me despite everything. Mark's sister found us, joined the hug. "You're stuck with us forever now," she whispered, "whether you like it or not." We laughed through tears. I fastened the necklace around my neck. The rest of the evening was filled with warmth and laughter. I drove home feeling grateful for people who saw my worth, even when I struggled to see it myself. Early January, one final email from Mark. Subject: Goodbye. I opened it, expecting more desperation. Instead, something different. He was moving to a different city for a fresh start. He got a job offer in another state. He hoped someday I could forgive him, even though he didn't deserve it. He destroyed the best thing in his life through his own selfishness and cowardice. He acknowledged Jana used him, but that he chose to let her. He valued the fantasy of his high school romance over the reality of what we built. He thanked me for 3 good years, apologized for throwing them away for nothing. The email ended with him saying he hoped I found someone who appreciated what he was too stupid to see. I read it twice, looking for the manipulation. It wasn't there. I wrote back a simple response, I hope you find what you're looking for. And I meant it. Hitting send, I felt the last thread of anger dissolve into indifference. He was just someone I used to know now. Someone who made bad choices that hurt both of us. I didn't hate him anymore, but I didn't love him either. He was just gone. And I was still here, building something better. In my next therapy session, Lindsay asked what I wanted for myself moving forward. Not in relation to Mark, just for me. My answer had changed. I wanted to focus on building a life I loved independent of any romantic relationship. Deepen friendships. Pursue pottery seriously. Advance my career. Learn to trust myself again, my instincts, my worth. Lindsay smiled. You're already doing all of that. You've been doing it for months without realizing it. She pointed out I'd rebuilt my entire life from scratch, created something authentic and strong. Walking out, I felt proud of myself in a way I hadn't in years. I wasn't the same person Mark left crying in our apartment. I was grateful for that. I learned I don't need someone to complete me, because I was never incomplete. Just temporarily lost. February brought a pottery workshop. 2 days, 8 hours each, with an experienced artist. I was nervous but showed up. The instructor was patient, talented, pushed us to experiment. I spent both days covered in clay, completely absorbed. By Sunday evening, I'd created 3 pieces I was genuinely proud of. The instructor pulled me aside. You have natural talent. You should consider advanced classes, maybe even selling your work. Her words surprised me. I never thought of pottery as anything more than therapy. Driving home with my new pieces carefully wrapped, I felt excited about something that was entirely mine. Mark never touched this part of my life. Never had opinions. This was something I discovered and developed completely on my own, and that made it precious. A week later, Natasha came over with her laptop and a bottle of wine. We're booking a trip. She pulled up beach resort websites. I realized she was looking at the same dates I would have been on my honeymoon. Instead of the gut punch I expected, I felt excitement. We booked a 5-day vacation. Natasha raised her glass. This is your divorce celebration, even though you never married him. I laughed. It felt true. This trip would create new memories in time that was supposed to belong to him. I was taking it back for myself. The next morning, at a coffee shop, one of Mark's old friends walked in. He recognized me, came over. How have you been, in that careful way? I told him I was doing well. He mentioned he talked to Mark recently. Mark moved to a new city, got a better job, started therapy. He seemed to be doing better. I nodded politely. I was genuinely glad Mark was getting help, but I also realized I didn't actually need to know any of this. When he asked if I was still in touch with Mark, I changed the subject. Walking home, I noticed hearing about Mark didn't hurt at all. Didn't make my stomach clench or my chest tighten. He was just someone I used to know, who made choices that hurt both of us, and now he was working on himself somewhere else. I had truly moved on. Valentine's Day arrived. Instead of feeling sorry for myself, I went to a Galentine's party Natasha threw. 6 single friends. We ate chocolate, drank wine, played ridiculous games. As the wine flowed, I realized I was genuinely happy, surrounded by women who chose to show up for each other, who celebrated friendship instead of mourning absent relationships. This was better than any romantic dinner. I texted Natasha later, thanking her for creating space where being single felt like a choice, not a failure. She responded with heart emojis, "You're stuck with me forever now." The call came on a Tuesday morning in late February. Mark's mother's voice, shaking. His grandmother passed away peacefully in her sleep. I sat down hard. The grief hit immediately. This woman who became my grandmother, who called me every week, taught me to knit, wrote me into her will. I cried for an hour before pulling myself together enough to call my boss. The funeral was Thursday. I arrived early, sat near the back. The room filled. Then I saw Mark walk in with his mother and sister. He looked terrible, thin, pale. Our eyes met across the room for just a second. And in that moment, I saw everything we were and everything we'd never be again. He was a stranger now. Someone I used to love, connected only by our shared grief for this woman who was better than both of us. He looked away first. After the funeral, at the reception, I almost left until his sister found me. Inside, people shared stories about his grandmother. I added my own, about how she taught me to knit after my grandmother died, how she never made me feel like I was intruding. Mark's mother pulled me aside in the kitchen, her eyes red. Her mother left me a substantial amount of money in her will, along with all her knitting supplies. Her mother talked about me constantly in her final weeks, telling everyone how proud she was of how I'd rebuilt my life. The words broke something open inside me. I started crying harder than I had during the service, overwhelmed by this final gesture of love from a woman who saw my worth when I couldn't. Mark's mother hugged me tight. "You were the granddaughter her mother always wanted. That doesn't change just because Mark made stupid choices." I spent the next week processing the inheritance paperwork, picking up boxes of knitting supplies. The money wasn't huge, but it was enough to make a real difference. I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I researched advanced pottery classes, found a year-long program with a master potter. The tuition was steep, but I could afford it now. I signed up. I also bought proper equipment for a small studio in my apartment, a better wheel, kiln, storage. Setting up the space felt like building something permanent, investing in a future I was creating. Knowing Mark's grandmother believed in me enough to fund this gave me confidence I didn't have before. I started the advanced classes in March, quickly realizing how much I still had to learn. I spent hours at my wheel, practicing. Slowly, I started creating pieces I was genuinely proud of. Work that felt like it meant something beyond just therapy. Spring arrived in late March. I looked around at my life and barely recognized it from 6 months ago. My pottery was improving. I'd been promoted twice at work. My friendships with Natasha and Mark's sister had become some of the most important relationships in my life. I was thriving in ways I couldn't have imagined when Mark left me crying in our apartment. One Saturday, organizing my closet, I saw the wedding dress. Still hanging in the back, wrapped in plastic. I pulled it out, held it up. This beautiful, expensive thing that was supposed to represent my future with Mark. Looking at it now, I felt nothing except the sense that it was time to let go of this last physical reminder of what didn't happen. I found a charity that provides wedding gowns to brides who can't afford them. The next day, I drove the dress across town, handed it over. Driving away, I felt like I just closed a book I finished reading. The story complete, even if it didn't end the way I planned. That night, I rearranged my closet. The empty space where the dress hung became room for new clothes that reflected who I was becoming instead of who I thought I'd be. I slept peacefully that night, without any dreams of Mark for the first time. I woke up feeling lighter than I had in months. In early April, Natasha mentioned she had a coworker who was single, asked if I'd be interested in meeting him for coffee. My first instinct was no, but then I realized I wasn't actually opposed to the idea anymore. We set up a casual coffee date. He was nice. We had an easy conversation about books, travel, our jobs. But there was no romantic spark. Walking home, I realized that was okay. I enjoyed the conversation anyway, and I was ready to eventually date again when the right person came along. I wasn't afraid of trusting someone new, because I trusted myself now to recognize red flags and maintain boundaries, to walk away if something didn't feel right. A few days later, Mark's sister called, mentioning almost casually that Mark was dating someone new in his city. A woman he met through his therapy group, who knew about his past mistakes. They seemed to be taking things slowly, Mark being more careful this time. I waited for some feeling to hit me, jealousy, anger, even satisfaction. But all I felt was hope that he'd learned from what happened between us. I told his sister I was glad he was moving forward, and I meant it. Because him being happy didn't take anything away from my own happiness. She was quiet for a moment. You taught our whole family what healthy boundaries look like, she said. Watching you rebuild your life showed us all what self-respect means. Her words stayed with me. This idea that my healing became a lesson for people I love. I thought about how far I'd come from the woman who stood crying while Mark packed his bags, and I felt proud of myself in a way that had nothing to do with anyone else's approval. In March, I started working on a large vase during my advanced pottery class, spending 3 weeks on intricate details. My instructor stopped by my wheel one evening, studied the piece. You should enter it in the local spring art show, she suggested. I was nervous about showing my work publicly, but I agreed. The vase represented something important, this beautiful thing I created from raw material through patience and careful attention. The show opened in early April. I stood in the gallery, surrounded by professional artists' work, feeling like an imposter until I saw people stopping to look at my vase. When the judges announced second place in the ceramics category, I was genuinely shocked, hands shaking as I accepted the ribbon. 3 different people asked if I did commissions. I gave them my contact information, my brain trying to process that pottery might become more than just therapy. Driving home that night, I thought about building something meaningful from the darkest period of my life, turning pain into actual transformation instead of just survival. 2 weeks later, Mark's mother invited me and his sister to dinner. The 3 of us ate pasta and drank wine, like we'd done monthly since Mark left. His mother mentioned casually that Mark reached out, asking about me. She told him I was doing wonderfully, and he should focus on his own healing. I was grateful she protected me from another attempt at contact. His sister squeezed my hand across the table, reminding me this family chose me regardless of what Mark did. Later that night, I stood in my apartment, looking around at the pottery pieces on every shelf, the photos with friends covering my walls, the reminders of the life I built from the rubble of my broken engagement. I wasn't the same person Mark left crying in our shared apartment 6 months ago. And I was grateful for that change. I learned I don't need someone to complete me, because I was never incomplete in the first place. Just temporarily lost in someone else's story. And now, I've found my way home to myself. What about you? Have you ever had to reclaim your own story after someone else tried to write it for you? Tell me what you think in the comments below. I really want to know.